Welcome to our show. Thank you for being here. Please share this out and let people know you're listening to Cindy Gomez-Schempp
and Duke Gomez-Schempp
on the Mexican Crossing Lines here on 88.1 FM KPPPLP Fargo Moorhead, where we are adding local color to your airwaves. And tonight, I am going to be talking about President Trump's comments about countries like El Salvador, Haiti, and the more than 50 countries in Africa.
Yeah.
Which I don't think President Trump knows
even knows
is a continent and not a country, because that's what kind of intellect our president really has, the stable genius that he is. So, and I think that, you've heard everyone else's take on this.
Oh, yeah.
And now you're going to hear a Mexican Crossing Lines. And it's going to be a doozy because we got a lot of material to cover. Because I'm going to bring you information, I'm going to talk about this in the way that it should be discussed, with honesty, with truth. I want to look at all of the different things that people have said, what is being said about what President Trump said about these countries, or whether or not he said it. And also, we are going to go over some of the real issues we should be discussing rather than his comment about these countries being S-holes. Yeah. Tonight's show is titled S-hole America. And I titled it thusly because I think that only in such a country does there, is it allowed that you have such heinous human rights abuses, such neglect of the citizenry in a developed country. And you know what differentiates a developed country from an undeveloped or developing country? It's the fact that developed countries, like the United States, have bombed those underdeveloped countries back to the Stone Age, such that they have been in recovery ever since because of the pillaging and plundering done by the developed nations around the world. So when President Trump calls these places S-holes, it is because of the pillaging and plundering of nations like the United States. In many cases, it was the United States that actually did the damage to those countries. It is that reason why those countries are still developing, why they're suffering, why they're struggling. And I also want to thank all of you for the calls, the information you've been sending. I am, as quickly as I possibly can, trying to follow up on some of those stories that you have sent. And I would like for you to keep sending that information because I really do appreciate it, as well as your comments and your questions. I don't always have time to share what those are because we have a long show today. So we're just going to skip that because I like to share some of the comments and
and sometimes we're a fast-moving train too. So the comments come in, and we're already working on something else, or we're looking at what the comments are about, or the information that we get from you. So we really appreciate it. Keep them coming, and I'm going to give you some ways of getting a hold of us. At the bottom of the screen, our call-in line number is there. It's 701-566-0917. Again, that number is 701-566-0917, and it's a call-in line. So you can call and leave a message, and people have been doing that, and we get good information, and sometimes people just want to say something, or they have something to tell us. That's a fine way of doing it. A really effective way is doing email. Cindy at kpppfm.com, or me, Duke at kpppfm.com. And you can also follow our tweets and tweet us at media_PPP. And you can go to our Facebook page. A lot of people actually just use the Facebook page. It's 88.1 Fargo Moorhead. And we also have the People's Press Project in Mexi-Can. And also our kpppfm.com website, where we put all of our audio podcasts and our videos. And each video and podcast, each show we will put up. And you can comment right there on those shows. There's a contact form also on our website at kpppfm.com. So please keep it coming. And if we haven't gotten back to you or we haven't mentioned what you talked about, we are reading things. So thank you.
We do thank you, all of you. I wanted to start off by addressing the topic of today's show, which is S-hole America, and my opinion of why this is an S-hole. I think that a country that has been made poor by being victimized by a developed country is not an S-hole. I would argue that the S-hole country is the country that bombs other countries and indiscriminately murders millions of people around the globe, that commits genocide to the highest degree in our history. I would say that the S-hole country is the country that maintains slavery to this day. I would say the S-hole country is the country that has a president like Trump and has had prior presidents like Bush. Bush 1 and 2.
Yep.
I mean, did you ever think that you would be at a time where you would look back upon George W. Bush and think, man, I never thought there would be someone dumber than that dude?
True. But you know, I've been looking back at the different presidents that I've been alive in my lifetime, and also having a more developed knowledge as I've aged and more things have happened. And I see similarities between all of them. I mean, I was just saying the other day that we've already had an actor for president. It was Reagan. And,
Thank you.
You know, and Reagan was like, people like, an actor got elected as president. How can that be? You know, and it's like, they're all actors. All of them are actors. You know, usually they come out of the shadows. You never heard of them, and they get elected and they become the president. But they've all done terrible things because they're leading a terrible country. They're leading our country, the United States of North America, and it's just that this one is a lot more verbose, and he's saying stuff out loud where all the other ones have done just as much damage to many, many communities. And there are no saints that have been our presidents. You know, we can wish that we had a better one, but there hasn't really been a good one because you have to look at where we live.
Yes. And that, just leads me in a perfect segue into how ridiculous it is that this is turn always into a partisan conversation between Republicans and Democrats, one versus the other.
Well, like one's better than the other. It really bugs me these days. It bugs me even more because the Democrats had full control of the Senate, House, and the executive branch, didn't do squat. And now the Republicans have control of everything. And this whole thing is that we've got to shift aside and have more Democrats. And it's like, when Democrats have been in full control, they haven't done anything. It's because of who is in Congress and how our government is run. We're a republic. We're not a democracy. And that it was established for wealthy landowners to have a say in the country. And it's still the same way. It hasn't changed.
The S-hole country is the country that has a president like Trump. But as you pointed out, it took a while to get here, and each varying degree of S-hole presidents prior to him, both Democrats and Republicans, all murderers, all warmongers, all genocidal, all the kinds of presidents that will incite violence in other countries, start wars with false pretenses. Do you think that the weapons of false reporting of the weapons of mass destruction was the first thing that was done to start a war like that? We know it wasn't.
Yeah.
We know it wasn't.
And plus we have nuclear weapons. I grew up around them. I grew up in North Dakota. Many, many, many missile sites. There's ICBMs pointing at Russia 30 miles from here. We don't even know if they work anymore. We don't even know if these things are going to blast off and kill us all here, if they're going to blast off and kill other people. We're the only country in the world who has used nuclear weapons to destroy communities. I mean, it's horrendous, and we just skip over that sort of stuff, and we look at other countries and say, well, they can't have those. We have to keep a watch on them. We have to police them because we're in danger from them. We've been endangering the rest of the world since we started industrializing.
We are so far from God, from the Christian tenets that this country espouses, that it holds, that it is almost, the perfect example of what Christ said when he said, you are trying to remove the speck from your brother's eye when you cannot remove the beam that is in your own eye, when you refuse to remove the beam that is in your own eye. And that is exactly what it feels like to be a Mexican crossing lines in this country, having been born in this country and raised in this country and living on both sides of this border, this artificial border that was created. Okay, that was created through theft and malicious war, invented war under false pretenses, just so that the United States could have a pretense to go in and steal the resources and kill the people. This is the blueprint that the United States has used historically to steal from poor, underdeveloped countries, which they have, enslaved, robbed, murdered. And now, our president, and this has been going on for hundreds of years, from countries like England and France and Spain, all these European countries that came here to use biological weaponry against my people, that committed genocide on a massive scale against all of the indigenous people of this continent. Over 100 million people. And then the audacity to attack Mexico in the unfair war. President Polk knowingly decided to go into a war where there was no weapons of mass destruction. The lie that there had been some kind of incursion into the United States was made up so that the United States could attack Mexico and steal its resources. So that the United States could keep trotting across the nation, trotting across the continent, under their doctrine of manifest destiny, and taking everything in its wake. And they created an artificial border and said, none of the remaining ancestors of all of those people that we murdered can even call themselves part of this country. You refer to us repeatedly as immigrants. We are not immigrants. My ancestors did not immigrate. My ancestors have been on this continent for over 30,000 years. Nobody has a right to be here more than me, more than my ancestors. Nobody. All of the indigenous people of this continent should have a right to roam it however we see fit. We are the last remaining survivors of the most heinous genocide of all history. We should go wherever we want, whenever we want. We are an extinguishing species. Yes, extinguishing. Because we continue to be killed. through a variety of efforts, not the least of which is environmental racism.
Mm-hmm.
Like what we saw here in Standing Rock, like what we're seeing all around the globe, but especially in this country and under a presidency like Trump's. So, and I'm sure that you guys have already seen all of the talk about what the president said, whether or not he said it.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that this country is so far off course in looking at what the real problem is. Partisan politics is not it. Who is more righteous, Democrats or Republicans, is not it. Let me tell you how I know. It was the same way that I knew that President Trump would become President Trump.
Mm-hmm.
Long before any reasonable liberal Democrat or any other kind of independent party
Mm-hmm.
would accept the possibility that it could ever happen. In fact, all of these people were adamant. You saw them.
Oh, yeah.
I talked to them, and they were adamant that
remember.
I was insane. I mean, they were ready. They were ready to make bets that they would eat hats and do all sorts of things if Trump ever won. Oh my God, that would never happen.
Yeah, people had convinced themselves that could never happen. That would never happen. I remember you talking to people, and you challenged them and said, "Okay, you go find people that really believe in these things. You're not going to find anyone because Trump's going to be the next president." And they're like, "What? It can't be." I think the progressives are really lazy. They assume that, that can't happen, therefore it's not going to happen. We're going to keep on moving this sort of direction. And in the back of their minds, they're like, no, it can't happen. So there's no acceptance or even really trying to work actively against it. Really working actively against it to talk to Trump supporters and convince them why they shouldn't be Trump supporters. People weren't willing to do that because they felt that there's not enough people that are going to support Trump.
The Bible says that because this is a letter to one of the churches. I don't know if it was, I think it might have been Thessalonians. I haven't read my Bible in a while, but I have read it many times. Anyway, the letter is to the church. It's a message to the church. It's a message to the people, the body, right? Like the congregants.
Mm-hmm.
And it said, because you are neither hot nor cold, because you are lukewarm, I will spit you out. That is what the Democrats and the Republicans are. They are neither. They are lukewarm. They are tepid. The Democrats are tepid at stopping slavery and white supremacy and rape in this country. They do not care. They do not care. And of course, the Republicans are full bore. Let's murder, rape, pillage, and plunder. They're all about it. Destroy the earth as quickly as possible, just as long as I can turn a buck. They are evil incarnate. They do not give a damn about us, about our planet, about the people that are here. You are nothing to them. They already have a house on an island somewhere with a bunker. They're on the list. When that bomb hits, when that nuke from South Korea reaches us, from North Korea reaches us, it is going to be you who are going to fry. Your children, your grandchildren, your neighbors, your community, not them. Or at least that's what these crazy effers think.
Yeah.
They do. They believe that they're like... They
believe they're safe.
Destroy the planet. Doesn't matter. People as stupid as Trump don't actually think. Do you think that someone becomes that stupid in one generation?
No.
2?
No.
How many generations does it take to get that stupid, that insensitive? How many generations did it take? How many hundreds and hundreds of years of rape, of misogyny, of abuse of women have we been stewing in, such that women will go their entire lives without telling people about their sexual assaults and rapes because of the culture that we live in? Even more so, that can be applied to racism. Even more so, that can be applied to racism. So we got here by gradation, folks, and you missed it. You are the proverbial boiling frog. That is what Americans are, especially white Americans, but yes, all Americans, because we have been lulled into stupidity. Focus on Democrats or Republicans. Who's worse, this party or that party? And you lose sight of the racism. You're still having a debate. All that is being discussed is a debate about who is worse, Republicans or Democrats. And Democrats want to convince you so hard right now. They want to convince you so hard that all of the people over there are evil. Let me just say, you're right. You are right. Okay? But you also are evil. You also. So let me finish my story about how I knew Trump would become president. Duke was saying that I asked them to go do something. The people that said Trump will never become president. And I said, I bet you he will. I have witnesses. I have witnesses that I predicted Trump would be president long before any white people in America, including Republicans, were willing to say that that was impossible. When they were still like 19 candidates, I'm like, oh, Trump is going to win. And it wasn't because I was weighing which candidate was going to drop off and who. No, it was because I was weighing in with white folks in America. It was because I was asking them about what did they think differentiated Democrats so much from any of the Republican candidates. And they're like, oh, we're completely different. We're completely different. I said, are you? Are you really? I said, I would like you. And this was primarily among the group of people that were Bernie supporters.
Oh, yeah.
That I sent them out on this errand. Okay? Because obviously, when I would say to Republicans that Trump was going to become president, they would just stare at me in horror like, what is this Mexican woman talking about?
Yeah.
Why could she think that? And I would, most of them wouldn't ask me. And, I didn't tell them because they don't want to learn. They want to be stupid. Just like that Department of Homeland Security woman that was being interviewed about Trump's statements. Kirsten with the silent J, so Norwegian, she has a silent J in her first name, Nielsen, who doesn't know white people populate Norway primarily. That kind of, I'm really stupid. She's not stupid. None of these people are really stupid. They are intentionally ignorant about the things that they don't have to worry about, which is in supremacy a lot. You don't have to worry about a lot. You don't have to know a lot. You can do a half-assed, mediocre job, even if you're president. It doesn't really matter. And you know what that does over time? It brings us to the place we are now with this idiocracy, this dystopian America where you have literally elected a game show host for your president who doesn't even know that Africa is a continent. This is what other countries think of us. We are so reckless. We are so irresponsible as a country that we have elected a monster who could kill everyone else in the world, and we do not give a s-hole.
Yep.
We do not give an s-hole. And that is why America is the s-hole, because we don't care. And the people that are in power are the ones that are commanding this ship, that are running this country and that are making the policies. They have always been those who make those policies. So I'm calling them all out, all of you, every single one of you that shared that video over and over again. You know that one video? Can you show me the tweet about the USA Today tweet on the Dreamers? This has been a video that was shared of this father being separated from his kids. And it's, it's something that everyone is talking about. All these compassionate liberals, they're so worried about the Dreamers. I mean, really? And they're arguing with their Republican friends and like, how can you be so uncompassionate for these Dreamers? They were brought here when they were babies. They should be able to stay. You're so uncompassionate. But the truth is, they're all uncompassionate. All of you liberals, I hope you're listening to me. All of you progressives, you Democrats, you other partiers, not Republicans and conservatives, all of you do not give a rat's ass about Mexicans, Mexico, or the indigenous people of this continent, and you never have. Everything about your daily policies shows that. Everything from the videos circulating social media where there are Border Patrol agents slashing life-giving water bottles left for humanitarian purposes to save lives in the desert. Or you're talking about the latest insensitive hate crime here in America, the latest abuse of people's civil rights in America. You have never cared. You don't care about the killings that are going on abroad in your name with your tax dollars. You don't care. You haven't cared. No, talking about posting these things doesn't matter. That doesn't change things. That doesn't make a difference. It's when we come to you in our local community and we say, Mayor, the police are abusing their power here. They're taking undocumented people, profiling them. City administrators, our people are being profiled. They're being put in your jails. You need to have the jails and the police department make an agreement that they will not be ICE enforcers, that they are not going to round up people and put them in cages because of the color of their skin. We are not like Hitler in America. We don't want our community to turn into that. I've been doing that in this community for over a decade, and it has landed on deaf ears because this community cares more about posting a Facebook post than actually taking steps to stopping these kinds of abuses that are happening right here. They're happening in every community, in every town in America. Every single one. Obviously, more so in the States where we are populating more people of color. But we are all being profiled. We are all being attacked. Yes, all of us, the people of color, regardless, because we're not walking around with our little Star of David or our little pink triangle. Here in America, they haven't identified. They don't need to identify who are the Jews so they can round them up and who are the gays. They need to just look at the color of our skin because our president and everyone else in America has made it a policy to allow human rights abuses, lynchings, killings, the continued genocide, the continued abuse, the continued economic oppression, and the continued environmental destruction of people of color's lives and environments and families. That is across the board. The fact that it is happening to some of the most vulnerable people, those who are undocumented, many of whom are victims of trafficking, sex trafficking, and other forms of human trafficking, that even those people do not garner the support of people in America, never have. Mexicans, the original people of this continent and America, more than half of it belong to Mexico. We are the ones targeted the most. And we are the ones that are denied any kind of asylum in this country. Wow.
Yeah.
We are denied. We are one of the only countries that are completely denied, other than those that are like North Korea and that are openly hostile and committing war, while America is committing these abuses on Mexico and Mexicans in this country and all of the indigenous people throughout Latin America, and has been doing so since they came here, since they conquered. So let's get down to brass tacks and talk about the reality of what this means, because that USA Today tweet tells you only a sliver of the problem, which is that 3.6 million dreamers exist in this country. These are people that by all rights should have the right to be here, right? And in addition to that, it's underscoring the fact that children are having their parents taken from them. What they're not talking about is the fact that children have been having their parents taken away from them ever since the United States began its immigration policy and targeted quotas against people of color. And so those people, including Mexicans, specifically Mexicans, because they were targeted, because we were once robbed and raped, pillaged and plundered by this country, America. Twice by this country, America. First by the British incarnation of it, and then the America that emerged.
Exactly.
And we continue, because we are so close to America, to be picked away at. America is like a vulture that constantly picking at our dying corpse, trying to finish us off so it can take its booty. But you know what? The true crimes of America are not just that these dreamers are being offered a non-solution.
Yeah.
You realize that the fight over immigration and the agreement being brokered for DACA, for DAPA, is for nothing. It is for a policy, a non-policy. It is not a law. It's a deferred action. We promise to not put you in a cage quite yet. That is the opposite of anything useful. You're still on a list. We're just going to you get to be in this longer line. The people that are going to the front of the line that goes into the cage immediately as a slave is going to be deferred for a little while. You're on furlough from permanent slavery. You're on furlough from being ejected from the country. And the number that they gave there is incorrect. Just like the number of undocumented people in this country that they've told you about is incorrect. And it's good that you don't know exactly how many people. It's good that you can't ever know exactly how many people, because that way they can kill as many of us. They can put as many of us into their slavery mills, their concentration camps / detention facilities.
Centers,
And you won't know about it. You won't care. And since many of them, in fact, most of them have been privatized, you can't even know, because their corporations and their corporate secrets, including how they make the special sauce through the slavery, is protected information.
Oh yeah, and the people don't get access to attorneys. There's really no guarantee of their constitutional rights as people are picked up. And we did a bunch of podcasts on DACA and DAPA about a year and a half ago, and we were working with a lawyer locally that wanted to show people that there was this way they could defer action on their immigration status and pursue their lives for a couple of years. And we're looking at it like, a couple of years? What happens in a couple of years then? And also, this is a great way to farm information of where people are and actually to qualify To qualify, you have to have a whole bunch of things in place, including not even leaving this country. That means you can't even fly out of this country. Say you're flying somewhere and they divert you to Canada, you fly over Canada and come back in. You've been disqualified from being accepted for DACA or DAPA. And so it was like this whole hoops that people had to jump through that they would possibly gain in the end that they wouldn't be thrown in a detention center and deported. That's all it was. And we thought, why are we doing this? Well, we held some meetings. We had people come to the meetings, and there were some people who actually had applied and been accepted. They were in school, trying to finish their education, trying to create their economic, being able to make a living in the United States and help their family out back home. And so we met people who were part of it. And now Congress is spending all this time using that as their bargaining chip. It's such a little piece of immigration that
it's a nothing piece.
It's a nothing piece of immigration that doesn't solve any problem.
No.
It actually creates future problems for the people that are involved. And now we have a census.
It concedes nothing.
Yes.
It concedes nothing. It is a joke. It is a disgrace. I am sick and tired of people sharing and spreading. Oh, we're going to get something. We're going to get some. It's not even a crumb. It's less than a crumb. It's it's the essence of the fart after.
Yeah.
It's worse than that. It's nothing. It is absolutely nothing. If I hear one more liberal begging people to share and sign petitions for the DACA or the call people, I will scream. And we're going to talk about what's real today, because this is what I had to tell all of you folks who came to me saying I was crazy because I told y'all that Trump was going to be president. I asked these people. Some of them, like I said, didn't want to know. They did, they're conservative, so they did not care to know why I thought that. But the liberals, the progressives, or whatever you want to call yourselves, the Democrats, they were flabbergasted. They're like, shut up! Don't even say that. It's crazy. And I'm like, oh no, I'm convinced of it. I said, I would bet you money right now. And they're like, no, you're crazy. Yeah, like I won't bet you money, but I'm like, let's bet. I said, I'm gonna make money on this.
Yeah,
I said, I want to bet $100 right now.
You should have set that up.
They got scared. They're like, no, I don't want to bet you. Like, I won't bet you money, but I'll bet you something else. I'm like, okay, cool. Let's bet. Here's what I want you to do. I said, here, let me tell you something. This is how exactly the same you are. All of you Americans to Trump. Y'all talk about how you want to help the dreamers, blah, 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 blah. But you don't give a rat's ass about all of the people dying crossing the border. You don't care about the mass graves along your border. You don't care about the fact that people are being killed in detention, turned into slaves in detention, and then having their bodies burned, incinerated, and thrown into the ocean, right? You don't care about the fact that there are people that are being raped on the daily in these detention centers, including children. You don't care that we are holding children in detention centers, children, many of whom are U.S. citizens that have never committed a crime. In fact, none of these people have ever committed a crime. In fact, they're being held under some strange loophole that allows our government basically to pick up any refugee, any undocumented person, any person awaiting citizenship in this country, any person that has got legal residency, or any person who our government's questioning their citizenship and putting them in detention centers worse than Guantanamo Bay, where there is no oversight. While they are being raped, while they are being killed, while they are being tortured in violations of treaties, our Constitution, etc., 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 we don't talk about it. We don't care. I haven't heard a single woman talking about Me Too mention all of the women being raped on the daily that are crossing the borders. Let's talk about who's really affected by rape culture. The least of these, those that go missing and murdered every day in this country to this day, indigenous women, our women, trafficked for sex, drugged, raped, and abused. And let's talk about the fact that you would rather say border security, and you would never, ever say tear down that wall, destroy that racist immigration policy. Get rid of it altogether. It is inhumane. It is unconstitutional. It is illegal. It violates international law. It violates human rights. It is just like America is Hitler. And all of you are participating. And you don't care. And you've never cared. And when I've talked to you person to person in our communities about what's going on, you don't care. You just look at me perplexed. Like you can't believe that what I'm describing could be true because it's coming out of a Mexican mouth. You got to go consult with white people. You got to go consult with immigration attorneys before you will believe the things I am telling you, because you don't want to believe, because you want to believe that as long as you are not bad, you're not as bad as President Cheeto, then you can just go on sharing these things about the Dreamers and everything will eventually be fine. Mexicans won't hate the genocide that continues against them, the inhumanity that continues against them. They'll just smile and thank you and hug you and say, well, gee, thanks. You got me less than a crumb. You got me the whiff of the fart after the crumb was eaten. That's what you got for me.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what you got me. Yeah, thanks.
You know, and you probably didn't know that you in North Dakota, we have a detention center in Grand Forks. I don't know where else there's detention centers in North Dakota. There might be more. But there's a detention center. I believe it's privately owned. Cindy's been there. She went and translated for some immigrants from Mexico that were held in Grand Forks. They've been transferred to Texas, transferred to Grand Forks. They transfer the people all over the country. And these detention centers are in your communities, you know, and you can start looking up where are these detention centers. You can't go visit them. You can't go inspect them. You can't bring a group of people to go visit people. I mean, there are closed places which they're keeping people in detention that don't have access to a lawyer, don't have access to their constitutional rights of being in this country. The constitutional rights are for people that are in this country. Just because you're from Mexico doesn't mean you don't have constitutional rights. You're in the United States of North America, where the Constitution applies where you are. And these people don't have any of that. And so it's another one of these things in our community when we're talking about all these things and you don't even realize it's right under your nose.
We are violating their constitutional rights. They do have constitutional rights. The United States Constitution says that it applies to all people within its border, not all people who are citizens.
Yeah.
And of course, actually studied constitutional law, so there's that. But let me just say what the real crimes are. Let's go down the list of America's crimes. Why is this the real S-hole? Why is America the S-hole? Let's go through it, okay?
All right.
I want first to go over what Kamala Harris said, because everyone was celebrating this too, but y'all didn't see the entire interview with this Gomez-Schempp, whatever her name is. What's her name? What's her Norwegian name? This lady that pretended to be stupid.
Kirsten Nielsen. I mean, to make fun, but that's what's her name.
Oh, I'm making fun of her. I'm dragging her. I'm dragging that biatch because, you know, she was sitting there acting stupid. Like, actually, even though I have like the most Norwegian face and most Norwegian name in the world, I wouldn't possibly know what makeup the population of Norway would be. Like, shut your face hole, lady. She's just lying for Trump. These people are blatantly lying for Trump, but Democrats also blatantly lie to yourselves. Like, you care. Exactly. You're sitting there virtue signaling to everyone. Oh, we're so much better. Yeah. No, you ain't. You do not inspire any hope in this Mexican crossing lines. And that should tell you a lot. That's why I knew when I was asking these people, I said, okay. I said, I want to believe you. I want to believe you. Trump will not be president. I want to believe you. I said, so you need to bring me some proof, okay? You need to bring me some proof. You're a Bernie supporter, right? So you got, you know, all these friends with these really open minds, and they're just like woke AF, right? Mm-hmm. So let's go ask them. Why don't you go ask them? Because the crimes committed against people of color by the United States are the hugest stain on humanity committed by anyone in the world. And so I think that y'all should go to anyone. I mean, I don't care. Call your Uncle Bert, your neighbor's good, or whoever you can find. Find me one of these Americans, one of these progressive liberal Americans that want to pay reparations for slaves. Find me one. Find me one. I want one. I said, but wait, there's a condition. These are the two things, okay? Because these are the two greatest stains on America. It's not just the slavery, right? It's the genocide and the land theft, right? It's both of the things, right? You committed genocide to steal the land, and then you were too lazy to work it yourselves, so you brought over a bunch of slaves to create your infrastructure and to do all your work for you. And then you call people of color that have been emancipated from slavery that you put them through lazy. Because the only way that you can stand to see a person of color is serving you. Which is why I say all white people want a slave. Yep. They can't look at us without seeing the slave. They're like, what are you doing for me lately? What have you done for me lately? That is why Trump refers to people from those countries as like, you want things done for you. Yeah. Because white people are used to having things done for them by people of color. So when all you're used to is being served by every person of color that you come into contact with, it seems odd to you to have people of color serving themselves, working for themselves, speaking for themselves, having their own agency to do for themselves what they need to do. So let us go to this Kamala Harris. This was a tweet, by the way, by the ACLU in which it talked about the fact that the Department of Homeland Security, which is headed by this, what's her name again?
Kirsten
Nielsen is the the Department of Homeland Security that was being questioned. She was being questioned by members of Congress by a committee about Donald Trump's statements about other countries, among other things. This was one of the things that Senator Kamala Harris, also questioned her about, because she had already questioned her previously. And I believe it was a year ago. And she had made certain promises specifically to the Senator Harrison, about what she was going to do to stop the abuses that were being reported, the escalation of detentions and raids on people that have no criminal record, people that are dreamers, people that are awaiting status in this country. And she promised at the time that they had a policy that already existed, that they were not prioritizing dreamers. They were not prioritizing people that didn't have a criminal history, like felonies. They were not prioritizing people that were, children, or that were just, But we've been getting lied to about that forever.
Yeah, forever, yeah.
I've been trying to explain to people that no, they're going after everyone. They always have been since they started this new policy. They have been going for everyone, as many people as they can get, because they've decided, I guess, in America, they're going to exponentially increase their slave trade.
Yeah.
And we are the fodder for that fire. People of color are the fodder for that fire of the increase of this system of slavery that has been propagated and grown in this country. Also, it should not surprise you to see allegations so close to the presidency, this one or any of the previous ones for that matter, to sexual assault, sexual abuse, rape, sex trafficking, trafficking of women, kind of allegations swirling about presidents, people like Epstein being brought up, who was trafficking women internationally and flying presidents and other politicians around in his flights along with them underage girls. So, yes, sex trafficking. Mm-hmm. It should not surprise you that there was a lawsuit filed by a woman who claims that she was raped by both Epstein and Trump, President Trump. Yes, Trump. And that he had made a girl with the Mexican sounding name disappear already. And therefore she feared too for her life, because both Epstein and Trump told these women that, and a witness overheard and gave a sworn statement to the fact that she was told she would be killed, just like that Mexican girl and her family were. So it should not surprise you to hear that these things are buzzed about around the presidency and members of Congress and people with billions of dollars and millions of dollars and all of this power, because that's what the slave owners always done. Don't you know? They've always raped the slaves. They always raped the slaves. And what did they do? Even when those slaves were their half children, their own blood. What did they do to them? They killed them. They raped them too. Yes, they did. Intergenerational pedophilia and incest. Rape. They enslaved them. They beat them. They tortured their own kin, their own blood. They sold them. That turns people into psychopaths. And y'all haven't stopped slaving in America. You never have. Perhaps you never want to, because you seem to be increasing your slave trading. But that is what you're doing. It's what you're doing to the Mexican right now. It's what you're doing to the people of color in this mass incarceration system of slavery. The people that are coming here, who are said by President Trump to be competing for Americans' jobs, are not, in fact, the main competition. They are the people that are in slavery all the way at the bottom. The people in the detention centers and the prisons of America and the jails that are creating the revenue for municipalities like Baltimore that generated some 75 to 90% of its city coffers revenues by arresting black people, over policing them, overcharging them, giving them each hundreds of citations, each citizen, each black person living there, so that they could make more and more money. There's many communities that have now installed cameras in the communities, but they have actually reduced they've put multiple cameras in communities of color in the town where the people of color live, so that the majority of the people that are getting ticketed through these automatic cameras are getting ticketed in communities that are densely populated by people of color. And in addition, in order to entrap them so that they will make more of a quota, which they have a contract with the Kodak company for. They got a contract with the Kodak company that says that after a certain amount of tickets generated, the amount of money that Kodak gives to the township goes up. Like, Kodak gets to keep a large percentage of the money under this contract for giving you these cameras that they set up in your town to catch people speeding. But they make it revenue profitable for both sides, and they collude in sending these cameras out to these communities of color, targeting communities of color. And in addition to that, changing the light time on the yellow light from 5 seconds, which is standard on most lights across America, what is supposed to be what is safe, okay, and changing it down to 3 seconds, which has resulted in numerous deaths all around the country that nobody talks about. There's so many ways in which white supremacy, white superiority, and the continued extraction of resources, yes, even our lives, we are bled to death. white supremacy and the people that benefit from it, and all of the people like you liberals, you progressives, and yes, all of you conservatives who remain silent in this country, all of you coconuts and all of you sellouts who remain silent while your people suffer, all of you are parasites upon the body of the weakest people in this country, the most abused people in this country. And many of them are Mexicans like me. Many of the most abused people in this country are those who have zero voice, those who are enslaved, those that are literally in cages, those that don't have and are not recognized as having any humanity or any rights, those that are killed indiscriminately by people like the Minutemen as they cross, those who are killed indiscriminately, raped and abused by Border Patrol, those that are robbed by Border Patrol, by the authorities. Everyone seems to kick the can down the road. And I'm going to show you that proof. I'm going to show you the receipts. Okay? So let's get into this. Let's go to that Kamala Harris thing so that you can hear what else she said to this Kirsten Nielsen.
Before I start that, we just had a little timeout, so you might have had just a little bit of shaky video for a second, but we came right back in. It's running pretty fine tonight. But I'll play this video, and it should go well. Our audio tends to come through fine, but we have all the tools in place. But sometimes it just, I don't know what goes on. But
for our social media listeners, yes.
Yes. So here we go.
Okay.
One moment, please.
One moment, please.
During a January 4th, 2018 interview on Fox News, ICE agency acting director Holman said he asked the Justice Department to, quote, look into criminal charges for elected officials with sanctuary policies as they are harboring illegal aliens, according to 8 U.S.C. 1324. My question is whether DHS is currently working with the Justice Department to bring any criminal charges against state or local officials.
I believe the request was made. The Department of Justice is reviewing what avenues might be available.
So that was a little video by the ACLU in which they are exposing, and this was according to that tweet. If you can bring up the tweet by the ACLU, it says that the Department of Homeland Security is bullying state and local officials. What they're doing is spreading misinformation. I'm going to translate for you because these people never talk in proper, direct English.
Yeah, exactly.
They sugarcoat things. What DHS, the Department of Homeland Security, is actively doing to further its slave catching capacity of completely innocent people, these people have not been charged with any crime, is to bully, which means AKA threaten, legal action against state and local officials who choose to opt out of Trump's deportation machine with threats of prosecution. That is threatening people under color of law. Mm-hmm. That is the federal government seeking to commit a federal crime in order to further its slave trading practices. Yep. That's what that is. Okay? So for every one of you out there that has said that you're outraged by the president is disgusting, you should be outraged at yourselves. You should be outraged because what's happening in America right now is that either you are actively oppressing the slaves like Trump and all of his ilk are, or you're turning a blind eye to the slavery, which is what the rest of Americans are doing. They're standing there pointing the finger at President Trump saying, oh, he's vile and racist and disgusting. But you and your ignorance are contributing to the same thing that he is contributing to. So you're not any different. Let me explain this to you. So again, I knew that there were two things that these people that did not believe the president would be Trump, these two things that they would need to bring me proof of in order for me to hope along with them, to dream along with them of the possibility of a Bernie presidency or a Hillary Clinton presidency, which I told them was impossible. I said, anybody that was on any side said, your candidate's not going to win. It's impossible. It's not going to happen. Trump is going to win. They're like, what? So I said, okay. I said, if you can find me somebody that really cares, like you claim, that's a liberal or a progressive, because I believe you're all a bunch of racists and hypocrites that want to point fingers at the conservatives and say, ooh, they're the real racists. They're super evil when you're exactly like them. And here's the proof. I said, if you were humane to the degree that you claim to be humane, then you would want that border wall destroyed and immigration policies, which are racist, unconstitutional, and violate international law, should be abolished immediately. That all the detention centers that they have been running illegally should be shut down. That all of the people that are in them should be freed, that Mexicans and Central Americans and all of the people of this continent should be allowed to travel freely the way that you've been letting Canadians do with no problem. You had no problem. Recently, you had to start forcing people to actually use a passport with Canada so that you could make it look like you weren't being so racist and unfair. And Canada, and you know what? Canada responded by giving you the big maple leaf, right? They're like, oh yeah? Well, we're going to start making it harder for your people to come into Canada too. Exactly. See how you like it. And they're, putting out travel advisories to their citizens in Canada, letting them know, don't go to the United States and carry a bunch of money with you to go shopping over there because the cops will rob you. They will rob you blind. If you've got anything that they can confiscate, because that's what they do, the corrupt cops of America. They steal from the tourists. They're corrupt. Okay? So we know that America, it's not just Trump. Don't all you liars, every single one of you liberals that is sitting there going, I don't know how to talk about this with these Republicans or with these conservative people. I keep telling them, how inhumane are you? How I'm like, dude, your presidents and all the people you supported and the policies that you supported both locally and in the country have been doing these things to these people this whole time. What are you talking about? You're no different. So I said, okay, look, the two greatest stains of Americans and all of their ancestors is this: slavery and the genocide and theft of indigenous land and indigenous people. So, one, I would like you to find me one of these people that can accept both that they need to pay, that white people in America, that America needs to pay reparations to blacks and to indigenous people, and allow indigenous people to roam freely on this continent because we are the survivors of genocide. We should be able to go anywhere we want all over this biatch, right? That the one of the many reparations that should be given to us for what you guys did. One of the many. And yet you continue to plunder and plunder and plunder. Just look at Standing Rock. And you don't care. You just keep doing it. You keep plundering indigenous communities because you think you can. So, okay, I'm going to get started here by reminding everyone, if you're just tuning in, what we're talking about. It's going to be a little bit of a different conversation than what you probably heard anywhere else. But I'm going to keep it real. I'm going to tell you the truth. No tengo pelos en la lengua. I have no hairs on my tongue. So I can tell you the truth. Try to come up with an excuse for not speaking the truth. That's a Mexican saying. Oh, yeah. Here on a Mexican Crossing Lines, we're talking about beep hole America. This is the real beep hole. This is the real S hole. You're listening to 88.1 FM KPPPLP Fargo Moorhead, where we are adding local color to your airwaves. Duke, tell people how they can contact us once again.
Well, look at the number at the bottom of your screen, 701-566-0917. That's our call-in line. You can call in, leave a message up to about 3 minutes. It's still working. I checked it. We had a few calls in the other day. And also you can email us. You can email Cindy at kpppfm.com. You can email me, Duke, at kpppfm.com. And also you can go to our Facebook site. That's a place where people tend to leave a lot of their messages. It's 88.1 FM Fargo Moorhead. We have a couple more. We have the People's Press Project, the Mexi-Can. And you can follow Cindy's public page on @CindyGomez-Schempp. She'll be doing some videos. Cindy reacts specifically on her public page. And then you can go to kpppfm.com. That's where we keep all of our podcasts, all of our shows, and we have a contact form there. And you can also comment on all of our shows and all the work we've been doing in the past. And there's quite a bit of shows going back for the past 2 years.
I've talked about a lot of this before. I told you to go educate yourselves. Most of you probably didn't bother to do it because it just shows. I mean, everything around me, as a Mexican crossing lines, everything around me informs me and tells me what America really stands for, what its people stand for. Yes, all of you, because you live it, you breathe it, you show it. It is ever present. It is in front of me. It is in your commercials. I breathe it in the air. It's like it's everywhere. I know what your priorities are in America because you show them, and they are not to care for the people that you have committed the most heinous crimes against, to pay any kind of reparations, to take care of them. And, you know, there's a monument in Washington that is supposed to be a reminder in Washington, D.C., of the fact that we made a promise that we would never again commit the crimes that we committed against the Japanese during the Japanese internment. Mm-hmm. That Statue of Liberty is supposed to signify that we would never continue committing crimes of slavery. We ditched that. We're like, America is the people that had their fingers crossed the whole time that they were vowing to do the thing. They're the most lying of all liars, and now that they have the lying prince of evil as their king, they're surprised. How did we get here? They're walking around in a daze. How did it happen? Because it's all around you. The sickness is within. Look within, America. It is your everything. It is your everywhere. It is your every one of you. All of you. It is a sickness that permeates this country, and you will not be free of it until you get rid of your slaves. Let my people go. Free them, because you will continue to suffer. You will continue to be plagued by wave after wave after wave of the wrath of God, of the wrath of the Creator against you. Yes, there is a Creator. And you know what he said in the Bible? He said that if he sends you orphans, if he sends you widows, if he sends you refugees, that you must open your doors to them and feed them, that you must see them as a blessing to you, as a blessing sent by God himself to be among you. You're supposed to look upon every single person that you see that is in need of help, whether it's a person that is homeless, a person that is orphaned, a person that's a refugee, a person that is requesting asylum, freeing countries that we have destroyed, freeing countries that we have raped and pillaged and plundered and made unlivable for them. That is what the Bible of this so-called Christian nation says you are supposed to do. And yes, and yet you have hordes of flag-waving, vulture-like humans stopping buses into this country of mostly women and children fleeing such countries. Most of those people indigenous to the continent that the flag-waving racists are telling them they cannot be standing on. The audacity of that ignorant, abusive stupidity of Americans that are so racist that they do these things, and those of you who simply look away, not only from the abuses that are going on every day to all of us people of color, but especially to those who are most weak and the most vulnerable, like people who are undocumented. They are literally the most vulnerable people that are imprisoned. So I'd ask you to think about all of the children of the undocumented who are left behind. I want to reiterate how important this issue is because there's a lot of information about what happens to these children. There's a lot of good literature out there and articles that you can look at. There is also a Frontline PBS film called Lost in Detention. It only talks about one aspect of it. I can share the link with you in the comments of the show. And it talks about the children that go into foster care, the millions of children that are put into the foster care system. But what you don't know is that those children are placed with white people. There is no, Indian Child Welfare Act for Mexicans because we are a stateless, landless people since the conquest. We cannot call ourselves, sovereigns of any land. We are put into permanent exile from both Mexico and to the United States, kicked out of both of our sides of the country, forced to remain forever in constant migration, circling a desert. Does it remind you of anything like perhaps the story in the Bible?
Yeah.
Do you see any parallels, you Christians? Do you think that maybe God might send you signs, such as sending you people through a desert whose names are Joseph and Mary and Jesus? Perhaps. Mm-hmm. And what do you do with these people? You put them in cages and enslave them and murder them and rape them. There is a price to be paid to God for doing this. Do you remember the plagues that he sent upon the Egyptian Pharaoh? Mm-hmm. Do you remember the frogs, the flies, the first dead, the heroin epidemic, the climate change? Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, you don't think that your hubris, the hubris of the people that would destroy this planet, does not have repercussions? If you don't want to call it God, call it science. Call it physics. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. Call it whatever the F you want. But there is a cause and an effect. And there is a DNA stain left on all of the murderers' ancestors, just like the abuse. Okay, so let me prove this to you, okay? Because I don't want you to get confused about what I'm saying. Like, Cindy's crazy. You heard of the studies that were done, scientific studies that have proven that survivors of the Holocaust who had their DNA tested carried in their children, the grandchildren of the survivors, carried in their DNA the signs of abuse genetically. Like their bodies were permanently changed in perpetuity. Their children's bodies were changed and their children's bodies were changed in the way that they had their ability to store fat and in the way that their fetuses grew and it changed everything. It's called generational abuse. That you not only feel it, you live it, you experience it in your bodies. Okay? That exists. It has been proven that the effects of what happened all of that time ago when the slavery was happening and the genocide was happening is still affecting our bodies today. So all of that crap that you say about how we're supposed to forget about that because it happened so long ago, even though it's still actually happening in the present moment, is ridiculous given the fact that we have evidence, we have proof that we continue to suffer the effects of that generationally. There's science, okay? Do you believe then, this is true, and it is, you can go look it up for yourself. If that's true, do you think that the perpetrators of that genocidal, murderous, destructive, rapist, psychopathic, sociopathic, destructive behavior generationally throughout your lineage, what does that put into the DNA, do you think? Huh? You think it won't have no effect on the murderers, only the people being murdered? Curious. I suspect you would be wrong.
Yep.
Let me go on. So I recommend that Lost in Detention so that you can look at the general, the damage that is being done, because our children are being kidnapped. Nobody's talking about that. Mm-hmm. You know, people are fighting over DACA and DAPA. I don't hear a soul talking about all of the American citizen, because they are born on the United States. And unless we have changed the Constitution and revoked birthright citizenship for every person born here, these children are having their parents taken from them forcibly by agents of the state. They are being orphaned of one or both of their parents by agents of the state, not for a crime, because it is not a crime to be here undocumented. It is merely a civil, oh, darn it. What's the word? Help me. Well, it constitutes a civil violation, not a criminal violation. Mm-hmm. Similar to not paying your taxes on time. Mm-hmm. And then you just pay a fine. Yep. But for this one area of policy that is not criminal, it is not under the penal code, it is merely administrative. For this one particular agency, we've given billions of dollars in money, and we've said, you have the right to detain people and put them away in massive numbers. The IRS can do it too, and it does jail some people occasionally in very extreme cases, but rarely, and it doesn't do it all the time, every day. It doesn't have a massive complex of private prisons putting Americans in jail for not paying their taxes on time. Because y'all, all of you would be in that jail. Mm-hmm. All of you. Because I know y'all have not paid your taxes on time, at least once, and then just paid that fine later on. Mm-hmm. But what are you doing to these other human beings? Yes, they're human beings. For failing to do something on time, for not being able to have the proper paperwork done in their country, or they don't have the proper access, were never given the right, are dejected by the country next door to them, in which they have a right to be, by the way. Those people are forced out of the country. Those people are kept out of the country by their very neighbors, the people that took their land and destroyed the livability of the country that they currently are fleeing. So, and of course, you know, the United States is a bunch of criminals that never honor neither their treaties nor their agreements, international or otherwise. They don't follow their own laws. They don't apply them equitably or equally against white people, white supremacists, and the liberals among you turn the other way, while the progressives among you go on pillaging and raping and criming and stealing and murdering and whatever the hell you do because you can. And you turn the other way, and you turn the other way, and you turn the other way. And you keep talking. You have these academic discussions about things like DACA, as if that matters in comparison to the other horrendous, heinous crimes being committed against American citizen children. Let me remind you, they are American citizens that are being orphaned by the state to the tune of millions and millions and millions. This has been going on for decades and decades and decades, and you haven't stopped it. Tell me how America is not like Germany's Nazis. Tell me how this is not another continuing, has always been a continuing Holocaust. Tell me, explain it to me, because I can't figure it out. How y'all can just sit here and pretend that this is not an ongoing genocide of our people, of Mexican people, of people of color in this country. an exploitation of the slaves, a continued exploitation, a continued trafficking of them. I don't see it. I don't see how any of you can clean your conscience of this moral travesty of the highest order that continues to be committed by the country that calls itself the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Exactly.
No. It's the land of the KKK and the home of the slave. That's what it is. It's true. I'm not even lying. That's just straight up the truth. And you will continue to suffer the misery. You will continue to be cursed as a country. All of your people will continue to die and suffer as a result of your desire to hold on to this moral turpitude of slavery and genocide, of your desire to continue to maintain it. I want to go to the human rights report that came out in 2010, okay? This is nearly a decade ago, folks. I want to point that out because I think it's significant. I'm going to show you the goods. I'm going to show you the receipts on what I'm talking about. This is a Human Rights Watch report of 2010, okay? Nemo, come in here. ICE oversees the fastest growing incarceration system in the United States. This is from the report, okay? In the 2009 fiscal year, 383,524 people were detained for various lengths of time for over the course of the year. A 64% increase over 2005. The detention system, I want you to start here, okay, where it's dark, and keep going.
Where it's dark in the bowl there?
Yep, keep going until you get to the end of that. Go.
The detention system has an average daily population of over 31,000, of whom women constitute 9%, detained for alleged civil, not criminal, violations of U.S. immigration law. They include asylum seekers, undocumented immigrants, legal permanent residents convicted of certain crimes, refugees who the U.S. had accepted for resettlement, but who did not apply for permanent residency in time, and even the U.S. citizens whose citizenship the government disputes. In addition, they may be victims of trafficking, survivors of sexual assault and domestic violence, pregnant women, and nursing mothers. While in ICE custody, they are held in a detention system that includes surface processing centers operated directly by ICE, contract detention facilities managed by private companies, bed space at state and county jails in agreement with ICE, and facilities run by Federal Bureau of Prisons, while the average person is detained 30 days. For some, detention can last years. This report gathers more than 15 separate documented incidences and allegations of sexual assault, abuse, or harassment from across the ICE detention system, involving more than 50 alleged detainee victims. This accumulation of reports indicates that the problem cannot be dismissed as a series of isolated incidences, and that there are systematic failures at issue. At the same time, the number of reported cases almost certainly does not come close to capturing the extent of the problem. Victims of abuse in detention face a range of obstacles and disincentives to reporting, from lack of information about rules governing staff conduct to fear of speaking out against the same authority that is seeking their deportation, to trauma from the abuse in detention and possibly from violence and other abuse they have previously suffered in their countries of origin. Most immigration detainees do not have legal representation, which may also inhibit their ability to report and seek redress for abuses of their rights in detention. To date, the government has not published statistics that comprehensively focus on the problem of sexual abuse in immigration detention. The Prison Rape Elimination Act, PREA, mandated the Bureau of Justice Statistics, BJS, to collect data on sexual abuse in custodial settings for each calendar year, following the Act's passage in 2003. BJS has included 14 facilities run by or exclusively for ICE in its survey on sexual violence in correctional facilities, which collects reports of sexual violence from administrative records. The 2004 survey reports 6 allegations of sexual violence for the reporting year. The 2005 survey reported an estimated 2 substantiated incidents of sexual violence nationally. The 2006 survey estimated a single substantiated incident. BJS also included 957 ICE detainees from the 5 facilities run by or exclusively for ICE in the Second National Inmate Survey, NIS-2, which collects information on these issues directly from individuals in custody. The results of the NIS-2 are expected to be published in late August 2010. Because both these surveys focus on facilities run by or exclusively for ICE, they do not shed light on the incidents of sexual violence, abuse, and harassment of immigration detainees in the hundreds of jails, contract facilities in which ICE rents a portion of bed space. This is a notable omission, both because of the number of such facilities used by ICE and because the rates of substantiated sexual violence are 4 to 5 times higher in state prisons, local jails, and privately operated jails than in federal prisons, according to the 2006 BGS survey. The Department of Homeland Security, the agency in charge of immigration detention, is not mandated under law to publish data on sexual violence and has not done so. In consultations regarding this report, an ICE official said that the agency would consider publishing such information in the future.
Stop there. Okay. So I'm going to pause there, and I'm going to have you finish reading this section after making some commentary. Let me just remind you, this is from 2010. All of these issues had already been identified. I have read earlier reports than this 2010 report about the abuses prior to that. In fact, I have a book from the 70s that talks about the abuses that were going on, that were rampant, including the murder of people crossing the border indiscriminately by Border Patrol and vigilantes. Sound familiar? Raping in detention, raping by Border Patrol agents, women being kidnapped, sexually trafficked. And this has continued unabated. It is not discussed. Where is this in the Me Too movement? Explain to me, please. Where are all of the celebrities? Where are all of the women? Where are all of the progressive women? Where are all of the liberals that are hashtag Me Tooing with the undocumented immigrant women that are being raped by the police? That it says, according to these reports, are being raped, trafficked, murdered, abused, tortured, women, children, little girls, little boys, some as babies, infants. Infants are being tortured. And they're Americans. They're Americans. They're just brown. That's the only difference. They're brown, and you don't care about them. You have a protest outside of the abortion clinic every day in Fargo. Practically, it feels like they're always out there protesting. They're wearing costumes and they got signs and everything. But nobody's protesting the abuse of these children. Just like nobody cares about all of the children that are being poisoned in Flint because they're black. Yeah. Nobody cares about what's happening to children that are black and brown. It's just the white ones that we care about. That's what the truth is. We don't care about these other people. The government knows and has always known about these abuses. They are intentional. I am left to conclude, after everything I've looked at and studied, that they are intentional because they are not required to report on any of these things. And even though this has been brought up in the past, no such provisions have been made to make them. PREA is just a suggestion someone made once upon a time. Nobody cares about it and no one enforces it. And you know what they say, Duke? A law is only as good as its enforcement.
Exactly.
And most of our laws are unfairly enforced. And this one is also unconstitutional and illegal, and it's racist. It is to its core. Everything about it is racist, which is why I told every single one of those Bernie supporters, every single one of those dreamers about how their candidate was going to win the presidency and Trump could never become president. I said, go find me one such human that you proclaim exists that wants to both give reparations to black people and indigenous people and also destroy the immigration policy at the border and the wall. Get rid of it. And these people told me, oh, I think I can. I said, No, you can't. I said because on the policy issues, on all of the other stuff that white people love to pontificate about, love to have their intellectual blah, blah, blahs about, they're not talking about race. And that's why the Republicans hate the intellectual jibber jabber of the Democrats, because that's why they love stupid presidents and they hold them up as trophies of the down to earth guy, because he's just honest about the fact that he's openly racist and he doesn't have to care about all of these details and talk about all of this other PC gobbledygook. Yes, they're right. In the end, the only bottom line, the only thing that matters is money. The only thing that matters is greed. I think Eric, what's it? Trump? Eric, is it that the one that's pale that looks like a dead lizard man?
Yes.
Okay. Eric Trump, the one you hardly ever see. I think it's because he's translucent. I think they only let him go out at night. I'm not sure. He's like Dracula, is a scary looking one. He was on Fox and Friends, I think, and they were asking him about this S-hole comment that he made about these countries, and he was like, "My father doesn't see color." No, he says, "My father doesn't see color. The only color my father sees is green." He said, "Let me just explain what he said to you, right?" He said, "His father doesn't care about humans. He only cares about money." And honestly, that is what slave masters care about. They don't care about humans. Mm-hmm. They can't care about humans. They can't have empathy for any humans. Not the ones they enslave, not the ones they live with, not the ones that they live in the community with, because they become terrorists, they become sociopaths, they become murderers. And generationally, this destroys their ability to have empathy and to treat other human beings of color like their equals.
They also he also said, "My father is the least racist person you would ever meet." And that's that Ben Trump's mantra is saying, instead of saying I'm not racist, he says, like, I'm the least racist person you'll ever meet. And then he went into, he doesn't care about color. The only color he sees is green. And then he went on to talk about, because he cares about the economy. And Cindy and I looked at each other like, so this guy only cares about money and not people? Because that's essentially what he was saying,
Right. And the way that you make the money in America is through genocide, land theft, and slavery. Since they already took up all the land that they could here, they're stealing whatever they can left now from the national reserves in Native Americans. They want to plunder all of that as well. And then, of course, they're going around the globe and robbing everyone blind. Okay, so let's talk about this land of law and order, this land of laws. They just want to secure the border and make people follow the rules and follow the rules. Let's see what's really behind that. This is continuing from that 2010 report, okay?
International treaties ratified by the United States prohibit the mistreatment of individuals in government custody. Under the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, ICCPR, ratified by the U.S. in 1992, quote, all persons deprived of their liberty shall be treated with humanity and with respect for the inherent dignity of the human person, end quote. The Human Rights Committee, which oversees the implementation of the ICCPR, has explained that detained persons retain all the rights in the covenant, subject only to, quote, the restrictions that are unavoidable in a closed environment. This includes the right to freedom from torture and ill treatment. The Convention Against Torture, which the U.S. ratified in 1994, states that the governments are responsible for not only acts of torture committed by government officials, but also those committed with their acquiescence. In reviewing the U.S. compliance with the treaty, the Committee Against Torture has expressed concern about reliable reports of sexual assault of sentenced detainees, as well as persons in pretrial or immigration detention, and recommended the government ensure that allegations of violence in detention centers are investigated promptly and independently, perpetrators are prosecuted and appropriately sentenced, and victims can seek redress, including appropriate compensation. Under the UN standard minimum rules for the treatment of prisoners, women prisoners are to be attended and supervised only by women officers. International law also affirms the right of prisoners to medical care that is at least comparable to the care and services available to those who are at liberty, which includes care after a rape. Like international law, the U.S. Constitution and federal law contain particular protections for individuals in state custody. The Eighth Amendment prohibits cruel and unusual punishment, which has been interpreted to include deliberate indifference by prison officials to the rape and sexual assault of prisoners. Immigration detainees who are in administrative custody are protected from such treatment under the Fifth Amendment's restrictions on the handling of individuals in legal procedures. In addition, the Fourth Amendment's privacy protections are relevant to practices that may facilitate the sexual harassment of individuals in custody. Federal courts have held that those privacy protections prohibit male guards from strip-searching female prisoners, conducting intrusive pat frisks, or engaging in inappropriate visual surveillance. Federal law contains specific criminal penalties for both sexual assault of federal prisoners and detainees and any sexual contact with detained persons by guards in federal facilities. Good.
Wow, that stuff's not happening. None of that stuff's applied in these detention centers. I've never heard of anyone being able to get compensation for being mistreated. I haven't seen that happen anywhere at all. Does it? I don't think it does. And people are held there without having any of those things, and actually they're not even measured because they're exempt from these studies. I think ICE is one of the most evil institutions we have in this country. And the Homeland Security Act, I don't know if you all ever read that when it first got ratified. It's horrible. It's a spying program to spy on each other. It's McCarthyism all over the place. And they did it under the 9/11 it was supposed to protect us. And it's not. It gives the government easy access to basically whittle away at the civil and human rights that you think you have in this country. So it's horrible. And they're the ones that are behind all these prisons all over the country, prisons and detention centers. And here we were just watching the congressional hearings. They're still giving them a bunch of money, and they still have this Office of Homeland Security that's supposed to protect America. And it's basically digging America apart.
And how are we supposed to feel as Mexicans, as people of color in this country, knowing that we have been screaming at the top of our lungs, begging for assistance? These reports have been compiled year after year after year after year. The recommendations are ignored. None of them are implemented. Very few of them are implemented. Some of them are retracted after they're implemented. You hem and you haw. You go back and you go forth. All of it to avoid having to do away with this heinous crime of slavery, of detaining completely innocent people that haven't even committed a crime. You're not supposed to be able to hold people that have not committed a crime without due process, but due process is denied to all of these people that have only committed a civil violation, a civil infraction.
And I think that's really misunderstood. I don't, because people use the word crime all the time. They're committing a crime. They're committing a crime.
Nope.
And it's not true. And again, we have such a horrible education system in this country. One, we don't study the real history. We're not taught the real history. We're not taught the truth about anything. Mm-hmm. So people are thinking, well, those people need to do it right. They got to quit breaking the law. And basically, you're uneducated.
Yeah, and they're racist because they specifically barred Mexicans and a bunch of other different countries from whom they pillaged and plundered most of their loot, who they don't want to have to look at. You don't want to look at the ancestors of the people you murdered and robbed.
That's true.
It sucks. Oh, shoot, it's probably make you a little bit jumpy, I suppose. But, it extends beyond that. And I'd like to know something, Duke. Yeah. Where were all of the women in the Me Too, all the people in the Me Too movement talking about the epidemic of rape coming from law enforcement against the women in their communities, probably mostly because the women of color in their communities? The epidemic of rape and abuse and violence against their own wives, against their girlfriends coming from law enforcement. Why aren't you hearing that buzzing everywhere? Because it's all over Hollywood and no one appears to be safe. Politicians, from actors to politicians to, people that are stunt people, or like these lesser roles, or people are starting to call out all sorts of men, saying this person sexually assaulted me. This person sexually assaulted me. It is an epidemic because it happens so frequently, because consent is violated by men, because consent is not even sought by men, because men don't even think about gaining consent from women, that it happens everywhere. And now the stories are coming out. And, of course, men have freaked out about this. But where are the stories about the cops? Are cops, who are among the most violent and abusive of their women, are they somehow exempt from this epidemic of rape, criminal behavior against men and women, abuse of men and women?
That's a very good point. And I believe that the women that are leading that movement are focusing on whiteness, and they're not focusing on the women that are experiencing that, because they're not them. No. And they don't see it as important. It's a really, really good point. It should be everybody that's included, and everybody that's protected. And we're not hearing those voices at all. And I didn't read the Time article, and I don't know if it even said anything about that.
No, it never does. The least of these are always forgotten, and that's how you know what a S-hole country this is. Because this is how it treats people. You can tell what kind of a country it is by how it treats the least of its people. You can, people. You look in places like Norway, which President Trump mentioned, and they have a system in which they take care of their people. They have health care for everybody. They take care of all of their people. But of course, they don't have the racial diversity that we have here. So perhaps it's easier for them to do that. But this is what's going on here in America. Let me show you more. It extends everywhere. It extends everywhere. And I want to know. I want to know where the hashtag #MeToo stories are about these women, your support for these women, calling out the rape and abuse that goes on behind hushed tones that are being committed by the cops, by the authorities, by the Border Patrol, by the people at TSA, by the by all of these people that have power, that have guns. I mean, even mall cops act like they're, there's been stories, and this has only happened to people of color that I've ever heard of, where they take people of color that are, suspected of shoplifting into bathrooms and do these invasive searches on them. Yeah. Penetrating them with their hands and stuff. It's finding nothing but dehumanizing the people in the process, because we have messaged, we have made it abundantly clear in America that you can savage any person of color that goes by. If you see a person of color that goes by, it isn't even a crime as high as kicking a dog, because if you kick a dog in America, they will set the ASPCA on you fast. They will call PETA. But if you kick a Mexican, if you treat a black person like crap, if you disrespect a Muslim, if you catcall a woman, a transgender person is murdered in the streets, that's fine. That's not a problem in America. That's been a consistent message to Americans. And Trump is just echoing that. You're horrified, and you standing aside and going, oh my God, how horrific is that? Is virtue signaling BS, exactly. Okay?
Yep.
Don't pee on my leg and tell me it's raining. You know damn well what your country was created on, and you don't know damn well what's going on in your country right now. You know damn well that people are being murdered in those jails. You know damn well that many of the products that are being, and many of the services that you receive in this country comes off of the back of slave labor by the hands of these people who have done nothing wrong, who are being exploited, abused, killed, raped, and worse. And let me show you how that keeps, it's like a ripple of diseased, cancerous, putrid, this curse that you have set forth among your own people, among your own country, for your love of slavery and for your love of genocide and land theft. Your love of exploitation, your love of gaining new resources that you exploit off the backs of people that are less privileged, America. Here's a report, I won't go through the whole thing, about the treatment of LGBTQ people in the custody of immigration customs enforcement. From November of 2013 for the Center for American Progress. And I just want you to know, you can go out on your own and seek these things. I will share these things with you. You can go out. I take the lengthy time. People are like, Cindy, you need to make your show longer. No, sure. No. If I could just say something to a person that is purposely ignorant in many cases, and complicitly ignorant because they benefit from the supremacy that they can just ignore or turn a blind eye to, that they don't have to confront. That's why the liberals and the progressives are so polite. That's their excuse. I'm too polite to stop murders. Yeah. I mean, I will go ape shiz if it's a dog or a cat. Like, I will raise hell. I will burn down someone's house if they abuse Fifi. But Mexicans, yeah, kill them all. Who cares? Mm-hmm. Refugees, screw them. Yeah, we're gonna stay in Syria. We don't even have a reason why. That's okay. Nobody cares.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Who are we bombing tomorrow? Who cares? They're terrorists. Mm-hmm. These countries are all terrorists. Yes, America looks around itself and goes, they're all terrorists. They're all terrorists. They're all terrorists. They're all terrorists. You just got to stop murdering everyone around you. Because, yeah, you're going to see terrorists. That's why you have a love affair with zombie movies, because it's in your brain. You know it.
Exactly.
You know what you are, America. You know what you've turned yourself into. You carry that stain, you wear it. You wear it. It wafts off of you as you walk by. Everyone can smell the stench. That's why no other countries respect you no more. It's not because of Trump. It's you. It's you. He's not just that little cherry on top of the poop pile. He is part of the larger poop pile. The larger S-hole of America. Mm-hmm. Okay? So, one thing that I will give to Trump, he made America apparent. He made America apparent. He made it apparent that all of y'all are like this, that you would allow this to even go on. Because any country that was different would have never gotten this far. It wouldn't be where it is right now.
That's true.
And Americans just sit there and scratch their head like teenagers trying to make an excuse for why not only did they not do all the chores while you were away on your weekend trip, they decided to have a party and trash the place, but they don't know where any of this came from. I don't know how this happened. I have no idea what happened here. Right. How did it get this way? I don't even know. I was sleeping the whole time.
That's right. The dog did it.
Yeah, the dog ate my homework. I don't know how any of this happened. And that's why they loved me stupid, too. They're like, history? I don't want to know anything about that. It makes me responsible for the continued abuse that I ignore, that I co-sign, that I vote for. Okay? Because you vote for it. You're voting for it. Let's look at this. You can go ahead and educate yourself on these things. You will find, of course, transgendered people are murdered, sexually assaulted at the highest levels in these detention centers, but also in jails. Do you think that Mexicans and black people in regular jails, not detention centers, in regular jails are being treated better than the people that are in detention centers? Maybe only slightly, because there is a way technically that you can sue and get a guard or the detention facility to pay out. Mm-hmm. But they have to violate the state rules for what they're supposed to maintain, like the basics. Like, you stopped feeding a person for several days and they died of starvation.
But we did all those shows on the private prisons, and Balco's work. No, was it Balco or And
Radley. No, that wasn't Radley Balco, but he was another one. It
that's
was,
right.
Sean.
The Mother Jones.
Yeah,
dude.
Sean.
Oh well, Bauer.
Bauer.
Sean Bauer, and the private prison industry is operating without regulation, and there's so many private prisons because it's a way to make dollars. That prisons make money. And they make money from the government. The government pays them money to run these prisons, and the government's filling up the prisons. So they're, prisons. Joe Arpaio is running for Senate in Arizona.
This is more evidence.
It's like he's a person who's violated human and civil rights of Mexicans, in Arizona for 50 years.
But as Trump has reinforced, he does not violate the values and policies, written or unwritten, of white supremacist America.
True.
And so as I said, I see the constant reinforcement in everything I see around me from all sides that nobody cares about what's happening to these people in these detention centers. And that also extends to what happens to people in the jails, not just in the detention centers. And now I'm going to tell you how that affects the rest of the community and you, all of us, everyone, that this is happening. So here's an article from 2017 in the New York Times about how reports of sexual assault. Oh, here's that hashtagable moment, Me Too's. How women have been too scared to report sexual abuse. We went around almost a decade ago, if not more than a decade. Has it been a decade or more that we were talking to the police about the need for sanctuary cities so that people, our communities do not devolve into crime and increases in rape, in assault, in kidnappings, and sexual trafficking, and
yeah.
Remember we talked to the cops about that?
Oh, I definitely remember that. We were actually trying to get police departments in our basic 4 cities in this community to not participate with ICE, basically. Doing ICE's job is law enforcement because it's not their job. And Minneapolis had passed an ordinance where the Minneapolis police won't grab a person off the street and demand to see their papers and check their immigration status. And we had a coalition.
They still do it, even though they say they have.
Yeah,
a policy
they're like, well, if it involves a crime, and it's like it doesn't. It's not their job. It's not their job to do that. And so we had all the city chiefs of police together, group of people trying to forge this policy. I believe the work was wasted. All the police departments do that now.
They're incentivized financially to do so by the federal government.
Exactly.
By ICE. And so are your communities. Your communities are incentivized to use up extra space in the county jail to hold people for immigration agents so that they can be rounded up and deported, stolen away from their family members. What are you doing to stop that in your community? How many of you are holding your local officials? How many of you are calling them people complicit with slave trade, torture, and abuse? Inhumane monsters. If they're allowing your local cops to participate under the 287G program with the federal government to round up people and deport them. What are you doing to stop your local jail from becoming a concentration camp where there are rapes and sexual assaults on all the time going on? I'm going to read to you what happens outside of the prison to the crime rate in communities populated by undocumented people. This is not current. It's from 2017 article called Too Scared to Report Sexual Abuse. The number of Latinos reporting rapes in Houston has fallen by more than 40% this year. From the same period last year, Art Acevedo, chief of the Houston Police Department, said this month, the drop he added looks like the beginning of people not reporting crime. You want to read? Start here in Los Angeles this year.
In Los Angeles this year, reports of domestic violence among Latinos have dropped by 10% and reports of sexual assault by 25% from a year ago, declines that Charlie Beck, the chief of the police department, said were likely due to the fear of the federal government. Dozens of service providers and lawyers interviewed said immigrant women were deciding not to report abuse or press charges. Laura House, which helps hundreds of victims of domestic violence in Orange County each year, previously nearly half of the more than 70 new cases that Laura Houses received each month came from undocumented immigrants. In the last 3 months, that number has dropped to at least one a week. In Nassau County, on Long Island, New York, the District Attorney's Office of Immigrant Affairs tip line for crime victims used to get up to 10 calls a week, but it has had none since December. And Domestic Abuse Wisconsin, which helps about 700 women a year get restraining orders against their partners, the requests this year have dropped to almost zero, the lead attorney there said. The Los Angeles County Domestic Violence Council typically received about a half dozen calls a week, with at least half from Spanish speakers, but since January it has received only 2 calls.
Or 2? No. Go ahead. Okay, so this is an example of a real person. So think about how marginalized, and then put on top of that another layer, okay? Put on top of that another layer. When I was talking to you about the difference between the discussion of, women of color and white women, when we're talking about rape and rape culture in America and all that, this is the kind of layering I'm talking about. Yanette, who's age 56, was asked that her last name not be used out of fear of deportation. She said she endured more than a decade of abuse from her husband in El Salvador, one of those countries the president called an asshole, where victims of assault have little recourse. Before she decided to flee to the United States several years ago, she mostly worked as a cook in Los Angeles kitchens, and in 2005 tried to obtain a visa meant for women escaping violence. But the lawyer she went to tried to force her to perform oral sex in exchange for his help, she said. Yanette initially worried about reporting him to the police, but she did file a report after deciding she would not be victimized again. Now, she's reluctant to move ahead with both the charges and her visa application. A conundrum. So think about that in contrast. Mm-hmm. Do you see the difference between the women who are doing hashtags and telling their stories online about how, they stood there and watched, this comedian jerk off, and they didn't tell anybody because they wanted to keep their jobs?
Yeah, they're focusing on their careers. They're focusing on their privilege. And, the woman you just spoke about there, she's focusing on her life, her livability, her actually ability to stay where she's at and be safe. It's totally different. And one is steeped in white privilege, and it's also maintaining that white privilege, and the other is a person that has no privilege, and it's worse and worse and worse for them. It's a horrible difference.
It's a big difference, though.
I also, it's as you said, that this stuff is not in the public eye because people aren't bringing it up. I mean, it's like we forget that there's people dying every day. We forget that each president, including Obama, deports hundreds of thousands of people, mostly Mexicans and Central Americans, out of this country. Hundreds of thousands, nearly 500,000 every year. We thought Obama was so good. He started the DACA and DAPA stuff. Meanwhile, deporting people in busloads and busloads and busloads. They send planefuls of people to Minneapolis. There's a place in Minneapolis where they do a staging area, and they ship people out of the Minneapolis airport to countries all over the world, mostly Mexico and South America and Central America, and just dump people off. It's happening all the time in this country, and right in our nose, in our own neighborhoods, our own communities.
If Joe Arpaio, who is one of the most rabid racists in law enforcement, can get away with doing what he's done. Torture, assault. The changes he made in Maricopa County led to a spike in sexual assaults amongst immigrant women primarily. Of course, not that he cared, but see, this slaving that America is so addicted to, it is also the root of the bane of evil in terms of this violence, sexual violence that we see that permeates this country as well. I told you, you cannot solve these problems unless you solve the racism. Primarily, you got to start there and then go from there and solve the misogyny. Here is an article that I'm going to read to you from, or actually that Lizzie or Nemo, one of them is going to actually read to you from it. From HuffPo. Again, this is from last year, April of last year, a report which reveals widespread sexual assault in immigration detention. Here we go.
Between January 2010 and July 2016, Department of Homeland Security's Office of the Inspector General, OIG, received 33,126 complaints of sexual assault or physical abuse against DHS component agencies. More complaints were submitted against U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, the agency responsible for immigration detention facilities, than any other DHS component agency. Of the total number of complaints, over 44%, or nearly 15,000 complaints, were lodged against ICE, Custom and Border Protection, CBP, responsible for detaining people at ports of entry, received over 10,000 complaints. This data, which Civic obtained through the Freedom of Information Act request, also reveals that OIG investigated only 247 of these complaints, or less than 1% of all complaints. Rosana Santos, a party to the complaint, immigrated to the United States from the Dominican Republic at age 9. Although legal permanent resident, she was detained at the York County Jail in Pennsylvania, where she was sexually harassed by a corrections officer in 2013. Santos was returning from her immigration court hearing when the male corrections officer escorted her and forced her into a room without surveillance cameras. He told her that she had to do everything he said or else he would sodomize her. Santos filed a complaint. Instead of investigating the assault, the government threw Santos into a solitary confinement for 11 days. Of the total number of sexual assault complaints lodged with Civic, only 18.5% of these individuals felt comfortable filing a formal complaint with DHS. Quote, a lot of the girls there had problems like this. Most of them don't even end up complaining or saying anything about it because they're scared of retaliation, end quote, said Santos in a phone interview. At family immigration detention facilities, Spanish-speaking children and their mothers are not encouraged to submit complaints. In fact, the Spanish version of ICE's handbook blames women for their own abuse by telling them not to drink or talk about sex so they do not get assaulted at the facility, while the English version tells women how to report crimes in a single paragraph with bullet points. When mothers and their children do file complaints in immigration detention, government documents show that the complaints can be easily ignored. At the Karnes County Correctional Center, a GEO group-run family detention facility, a young girl under 18 filed a complaint about sexual assault. A medical exam of the child showed indications of sexually transmitted disease and vaginal scarring. Despite physical evidence, ICE declared the allegation of sexual abuse unfounded. Men also are discouraged from filing complaints.
Okay. Well, no, don't. I'm going to have you finish it here in a second, but I just wanted to make the commentary that there was clear evidence on a child. This is a little girl. I believe that she is 8 years old. I'm going to have this Civic report, and the report contains a copy of the federal complaint, so you can read all of these things on your own and see where they come from, all the evidence that's been collected against the slaving states of America and your genocidal agenda of abuse of black and brown people, your disgusting racist continued habit of slaving and killing and exploiting black and brown people for profit. And this girl, it says she was under 18, to keep you thinking, oh, she must have been something like 17 or 16, because that's more palatable than hearing that she was 8 years old, right? That there are guards raping children, very likely right in front of their moms, because they keep them all together in pens, like chattel, like slaves. And there is evidence of our authorities, our military, sodomizing people's children in front of their parents. This is nothing. This is in your DNA, right? Your ancestors sodomized their own children that were mixed with the slaves that they made, because they all had sex with the slaves. Not just, this wasn't just something that some of the guys did. All of the best of them did. Washington did it. Jefferson did. I mean, we're talking about the forefathers of your country, right? These upstanding men that are on all your money, right? That you talk about all the time when you're defending this country's rights. Those men who were raping the slaves and having babies with the slaves and then selling them and raping them too. These were the kinds of men that founded your country, the best of them. Do you think everyone else wasn't allowed to do it? Do you think that the cracker that was hired to whip the black people for pennies more than the slaves were getting paid didn't take advantage of that ability to rape and do whatever they wanted to the black people too? Yes. I mean, it's in the social contract among white people. That's why I know you were going to vote in a Trump presidency, because you're all in on it. You're all okay with it. Okay? I see it. It goes on and on and on and on and on. Now here are more facts from the federal complaint. Okay? This is an overview of the complaint. Civil and human rights organizations for both governmental and non-governmental have raised concerns over sexual abuse in U.S. immigration detention facility for years. In 2009, the National Prison Rape Elimination Commission issued a report finding that a large and growing number of detained immigrants are at risk of sexual abuse. Two factors cited for the heightened vulnerability of people in immigration detention included social isolation, language barriers, and reluctance to report abuse due to fears of retaliation and or deportation. In 2010, Human Rights Watch released a report. Oh, Human Rights Watch, that report about all the stuff they've collected for years before and the decade before that, that I just showed you.
Exactly.
What have they done about it?
Nothing.
Increased the raping, increased the abuse, increased the deaths in custody, increase the rapes, increase the torture. That's all they've done. That's all they've done. And if you were listening to Senator Kamala Harris, if you go and listen to the full interview that she asked of this woman running DHS right now that can't remember whether or not Norwegians are mostly white, can't remember whether the president said S-hole, doesn't understand that these racist policies are murdering people. Like she's not the queen of that. Like this evil, disgusting, murderous, criminal woman, white woman, is not the pinnacle of that herself. So this report is now telling you again what they have found. That 2010 report by Human Rights Watch documented more than 15 separate incidences and allegations of sexual abuse and harassment involving more than 50 alleged victims. In 2011, the ACLU obtained and published data containing nearly 200 allegations of sexual abuse in immigration detention since January 2007. And remember, these people coming forward are usually going to be retaliated against. So it's got to be pretty horrific what they're going through for that many people to actually have the cojones to come forward, knowing that they could face deportation, death, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Retaliation, which those who have reported have felt, have received. In 2014, the Mexican American Legal Defense and Education Fund submitted a complaint regarding numerous allegations of substantial ongoing sexual abuse of women detained in the Carnes Center in Texas. In 2016, Human Rights Watch released a report about sexual assaults facing many transgender women in immigration detention facilities. Despite repeated calls from the advocates for the U.S. government to prevent sexual abuse in immigration detention and ensure justice for survivors, sexual abuse remains a systemic problem. Data obtained by Civic suggests that the number of allegations have increased since 2010. Go listen to what Kamala Harris asked this woman from DHS. She tells her, what happened since the last time I interviewed you in the committee? Everything has increased. I have reports here that show that even though you gave a directive that dreamers were not a priority, their detentions have increased. That even though you said that the detention of people with no criminal record was not a priority, their detentions have skyrocketed. That you told me that there was going to be a directive written and specifically given to all of your staff, and you're telling me now you didn't do it. Go listen to her interview. She says all of these things. What does that show you? Most of you haven't been paying attention because y'all don't care what happens to all of these undocumented people, so you won't even Google what happens to them. You won't Google all of the graves along the border. You won't Google the way that they die or on that border. You won't do the homework and go watch those movies. You could. You could find out for yourself. I've given you a lot of resources. You could go back and educate yourself if you wish to stop. And there are many ways. There are many effective ways in which you, every Joe, every American person could actively work on stopping the slavery system by going to the local jail, by going to your local chief of police, by going to your local city administrator, by going to your local mayor and going, are you a sanctuary city? If not, why the hell not? This needs to happen now. You are participating in a slave system. You are participating in local concentration camps in my backyard. I swore that if I ever saw something Hitler-like happening in my country, I would stand up against it. I was not going to be one of those Niemöller quotes that I let people take all of these other people away in my midst. Not on my watch. No. But y'all don't do that. Y'all stay silent. You won't confront your city leaders. And your city leaders, even if you do, if I've confronted them, I have. They all hate me because I've confronted them. They all run from me. They don't want to hear about this. They don't want to talk about it. But I'll tell you what, they have blood on their hands too, because I told them. And see, that's another thing that the Bible tells you. Remember all those people that were killed that God sent to warn people that they were doing something wrong? They were called prophets. Remember those dudes? I know you Christians here in America love you some Christian storytelling from a Mexican crossing lines. That's why I'm bringing you the stories from your Bible that you murdered my people for. So I thought I would be respectful and learn that stuff because you forced me to, even though none of you have read it. That's why I'm trying to help you out right now. Yeah, it says that. Doesn't it, Duke? I made you read it. Do you remember the story? What does it say?
Give me a little hint.
Were you not listening to me? Were you reading?
I was reading through this stuff and getting ready to shuffle through some more scenes here.
Jonah, honey. I'm talking about the prophets. I asked you, do you remember what the Bible... See?
Yep, Jonah.
Bring it back to me. Because see, the white people, they do not know their Bible. They do not even care. I could be talking right next to them about the Bible and they're like... not listening to anything about the Word of God. Because y'all don't ever care about the Word of God. That doesn't mean anything to white folks. All they care about is using their holiness to murder people with. Their religions to assimilate people, to capitalize on their resources and their people. The story of the warners, the people that came to warn the people in the Bible, is the story of the prophets. And God was pretty ticked off. I mean, some people believe, like Muslims believe, that Jesus was such a person, that he was a prophet of God, just like Muhammad. And in fact, he was. Now the Christians are going to come and try to kill me because I'm telling them this. But he is, by definition, a prophet because he came to tell the people, to warn the people what was going on. So, like a person that comes and warns you, they are a prophet. And if they were bringing the message of God, that's what they were, right? They were coming to warn the people, to tell them the truth, so that they wouldn't perish because of their sin. So these people, they were usually murdered. And the people that they're supposed to go warn were sometimes complete assholes, like America is. And the people that lived there were all complete a-holes, like America is. And so they didn't want to actually warn them. They're like, God, why do you even care about those people? I mean, even Moses was frustrated. Remember, they were wandering around in the desert and they couldn't follow God's rules. They kept breaking God's rules. So he made them wander around the desert for 40 years. Well, Moses was sick and tired of these people messing up and not listening to God. And he said, God, why don't you just leave these people out here? See, even Moses got fed up with having to be a prophet of the truth and telling the people the truth because they were ungrateful. They didn't receive the truth and let it bathe over them and cleanse them and let it save them. They didn't change their hearts. They hardened their hearts. They stiffened their necks and they entrenched themselves further in their supremacy and their feeling of superiority over God himself. They don't have to render any kind of response to anyone. They don't have to pay for their crimes. But the truth is, everybody does. And let me tell you what happens. The prophet is only supposed to take the message. They're not supposed to make the people listen to it. That's up to you. If you don't listen to it, you will be plagued by whatever God has in store for you for not heeding his warning. I am just telling you the truth. This kind of evil cannot be perpetrated for years and years, for decades, for centuries after century after century, and not have the deleterious effect that it has had, that it does have, that it is having on people of color, continued because of the genocide and the racism of white supremacy and those who condone it in America, which is almost everyone, and because of what it does to white people, because how it dismembers them, makes them ignorant oafs that ignore human decency and human life and don't care about anything or anyone, that dumb themselves down so they don't have to think, so they don't have to feel, that actively exploit and rape anyone that they want to. Okay, but let me bring you back to this report in Civic, okay, which also analyzed data regarding calls made to the ICE ERO detention reporting and information line, which is a DRIL for short, between October 12 and March 2016. According to this data, the highest number of drill calls related to sexual and or physical abuse incidents came from the Jenna LaSalle detention facility, followed by the Houston Contract Detention Facility, Adelanto Correctional Facility, Northwest Detention Center, and the San Diego Contract Facility. Those states are heavily populated by Mexicans.
Definitely.
All 5 detention facilities with the most sexual and physical complaints are privately operated. They practically put every single thing in place to guarantee that these people will be abused, raped, assaulted, exploited, robbed, because they make it so there is absolutely no way these people can protect themselves. They can't even speak the language. That many times they can't talk to. I mean, they're completely isolated. They're enslaved. How is this not human rights violations? If the Trump administration, and this is right from the report, okay, If the Trump administration is serious about sexual assault awareness and prevention, quote unquote, they're quoting him, his statement, President Trump's statement that he cares about sexual assault awareness and prevention. And I'm saying this not just to Trump, but to all the Americans like him that voted for him. And those of you who have stood by and been lukewarm, have been this, let it happen. I don't care if slavery is happening. I don't care if those racists next to me get away with this. And you're going to not stop the people in your own community that are contributing to rounding up these innocent people and putting them in cages and killing them and raping them. This is for you too. This is for all of you, America, because it's all of you that is an asshole unless you wipe the excrement and the blood off of your bodies and wash yourselves off and beg for forgiveness from God. Do penance for what you have done. Pay reparations so that you can be forgiven for your crimes, for your past crimes and your present crimes, for your continuing crimes against my people. This goes for all of you. If the Trump administration, it says, is serious about sexual assault awareness, and I would say if all of you are serious about ending slavery, are serious about sexual assault awareness and prevention, then start with adhering to zero tolerance policies for sexual abuse of immigrants, of the most vulnerable people. I added that last part. This woman, Christina Philo, said, start with the zero tolerance policy for sexual abuse and immigration detention. She's an attorney and co-founder and executive director of the organization Civic. Continuing her quote, if the Department of Homeland Security is either unable or unwilling to ensure that zero sexual abuse, zero rapes of children, zero tortures of citizens, zero. But you see, I've shown you it's built in and it's continuously ignored. So it's built in that it's continuously ignored, and it's continuously ignored because it's built in. Because this is what is supposed to happen to these people. And believe me, until you do right by my people, nothing in your country will go well for you. Your epidemics of rape, of opioid deaths, of depression, of suffering, of all of this destruction will continue. The plagues will get stronger like the groanings of a woman in labor. Your destruction is intertwined with the destruction that you rain down upon the people of this land, the original people of this land, the Mexicans. Why don't you read this next part, Nemo? While it's right after the high. Yeah.
While ICE has created performance-based national detention standards, PBNDS, as guidelines for its immigration detention facilities, there are no public standards that govern the conditions and procedures in CBP facilities. The absence of standards is especially troubling given recent reports of widespread sexual abuse in CBP facilities. In June 2014, a group of civil and human rights organizations filed a complaint on behalf of more than 100 children who experienced abuse while in CBP custody. Approximately 1 in 4 of the children had reported some form of physical abuse or sexual assault, and more than half of these children reported verbal abuse, such as sexually charged comments. In May 2015, a CBS News investigation found sexual misconduct in the ranks of CBP to be significantly higher than other federal law enforcement agencies. Their investigation included the testimony of James Tomshek, who handles sexual misconduct investigations as a chief of internal affairs at CBP for 8 years. Between 2012 and 2014, he noticed a spike of more than 35 sexual misconduct cases against agents. In March 2017, the American Civil Liberties Union of Northern California filed 2 claims with the federal government on behalf of two sisters from Guatemala who were sexually assaulted by a CBP officer in July 2016. The sisters, then 19 and 17 years old, encountered CBP officers after crossing the border. They asked for help and they were taken to a CBP field office. Once there, the sisters were led by a federal officer into a closet-like room, one at a time, told to remove all their clothes, and sexually assaulted. The sisters reported the abuse shortly after it occurred to another CBP officer in the field office where they were held, and investigation was launched by the DHS OIG. Federal authorities have not pursued criminal charges against the officer, nor is it clear whether the officer has faced any disciplinary actions for assaults on the sisters.
Well, I would think that they aren't going to be pursued. And, it's shocking and surprising that they're, well, maybe not shocking and surprising because these are prisons that are basically unregulated. And these are detention centers that are unregulated.
Concentration camps, killing grounds.
And so it's like, it should outrage all of us that this stuff is happening, and this stuff is readily available. And the ACLUs and all these states doing this work, they promote and talk about everything they do. We should all be knowing about this, but we're not talking about this or doing anything.
No, nobody's doing anything about it. And this is happening to children. It's been going on since these policies were put into place. The abuses have just gotten worse and worse as mass arrests and, more and more racist policies like Operation Wetback and, tightening of the border and, regulating where people moved and how many people could move to the country and, shutting down the border for the employment that the United States demands from Mexico. The cheap and slave labor that it demands from Mexico and Mexicans. Now, I want you to check out this other report. This is the last thing I wanted to share with you so that it's very clear to all of you. And I know it was a longer show than you're used to watching, but I want you to know that people of color have it from this community, not just Mexican either, Iraqis, Sudanese,
and Kurdish
people,
some
even white people that were mistaken for foreigners.
Yeah. Somali men have been detained and run after at bus stops. I mean, ICE basically goes to the bus stop and starts rifling through people's papers. If they have them, and they're not picking on someone that looks like they're from the middle of North Dakota and asking them to prove their citizenship because us North Dakotans don't even care anything that proves that we're a citizen. We don't have to. We're never asked.
And all of our city leaders that are supposed to be so welcoming and care for refugees and immigrants to our communities say nothing to demand because they're the ones that are employing the police officers, the chiefs of police and their officers. They could demand of those people that they not violate the human rights of people here in the United States that simply because they look like they're people of color are being profiled. In many instances, the people that we're telling you about, all of the people that we're telling you that were sent to detention were all legal residents or U.S. citizens. That's the part that you need to understand. All of these people had to spend tens of thousands of dollars and lose their jobs and even their homes sometimes.
And a lot of people who are U.S. citizens or refugees, they have to check in with Homeland Security. They're going to go on a vacation. It's like they have to call their daddy and get permission to let them know they're going to be traveling around, moving around. They're going to leave their house today, be out in public. And so I've heard stories of where people just nonchalantly say, you had to talk to Homeland Security because I'm going to go visit my relatives in the East Coast. And I'm like, you have to call Homeland Security before you go on a vacation? Yep, pretty much. So that sort of stuff is happening too. I think that I'd like to see the cops police ICE in this community, and go tell ICE to get the heck out of the bus station and quit interrupting business and basically trespassing to go rifle through people's documents and demand documents that people might not have. And they might be the guy that
they're not required to.
The guy that got tackled by another person that just helped ICE out that day, he had his papers at home. He didn't have them with him. But they detained him, and he got arrested and detained. Someone else had to go get his papers, and it took a long time to actually get him out of jail. I think it was like a week. And this guy had just come from somewhere on a bus, and he lived here. And he
was sitting in a vehicle outside waiting for someone who was getting off the bus.
No, that was another one. That was another
it was a different one.
Yeah,
Jesus Christ.
This stuff happens a lot.
It happens right in your neighborhood, in your home, when you're watching the TV, or you're watching that latest viral video of another Mexican getting separated from their family, and they're crying at the airport, or they're crying at the border, reaching through the bars. You don't have to go, oh, I wish I could do something to help end their suffering. Do it. Go to your administration in your city. Demand that your city protect and give sanctuary to these people. Demand that your police stop rounding them up and feeding the slave trade. Demand it. Tell them what you have learned and tell them that it needs to stop. This evil needs to stop because it will affect you. It's going to touch you. It's already touching U.S. citizens and legal residents. And not to mention the fact that once it became fashionable and illegal in places like Arizona, for as long as they made it legal, and then, the constitutional law said that the Supreme Court ruled that this law was unconstitutional. They were actually profiling people and violating their constitutional rights. Did they have to stop? But it gave people, law enforcement, really the green light all across America to profile people of color. It was a signal. It was a dog whistle. It's time to start arresting en masse all the people of color. It's time to fill up all the extra jails we made. It's time to get all the new slaves now. Get them ready. Put them in the pens. We're building the prison industrial complex. All of them are invested in these companies like the Geo Group, like CCA. They're making money now off of the idea because they can't even build to scale. They can't even build to scale because they're filling up the jail so fast. They're making so much damn money hand over fist on the slave trade. And all of the people that fall through the cracks, they're all mostly, for the most part, people of color, people that can't even speak English, people that can't defend themselves, people that are throwaways and expendables in this racist society, in this racist S-hole America that we live in. That they're not going to stop, even though they don't have enough room in those jails, even if they shut some of those jails down. It doesn't matter. They're going to keep going hand over fist, making more and more money, even though all of these prisons in Florida, the state that has the most people in prison in the whole country, other than in California, that state that has the most reported abuses of prison abuse in the country, Florida, that place, the place that has all these black people that have lost their rights to vote forever because of these felony prohibitions that exist in so many states densely populated by people of color. Yeah, that Florida, there is massive striking of all of the prisoners because they work them like slaves that they are. And they said that they don't want to continue to be abused. They're talking about not being properly fed, not getting proper care. They're talking about violations of human rights on a massive, massive scale. Those are all American citizens I'm talking about. This has been going on. We reported on massive striking last year, and it's happening in detention centers too. And the abuse and the retaliation by authorities against those prisoners, against those slaves, is brutal and horrific. They kill them sometimes. And of course, that's obviously the worst that they can do, but they do all sorts of other things in between, including torture. And
they're rarely investigated. Like the article is saying that to you. The last article you put up is that not investigated. None of the stuff's investigated.
It never is. It shows you the pattern. That's what it's supposed to do, and that's what they're going to keep on doing because they're violating the human rights of people here in America more than any other country. More than any other country that has more prisoners, like you would think China or Russia or India might have, since they have much, much larger populations. But no, This is the S-hole where all of the prisoners of the world, the majority of the prisoners of the world are housed. This is the place that still has slavery. This last article I'm going to share with you is a sexual assault claim at private immigration detention centers. And it talks about what Duke was just mentioning, which is that sexual assault that is reported, which again, we've told you how difficult, how almost impossible it is for people to report those abuses and assaults in detention or in a jail. And yet, those that are reported are rarely investigated. A news report showed that sexual assault and harassment claims at immigration detention centers are rampant, and you can go and look at the report for yourself and the details. They're lengthy reports. You need to go and check it out for yourself. And then ask yourself if you're on board with the slave trade that your country is dealing in. Are you on board with the massive Holocaust taking place right now in your backyard, in all over America, in the county jails where they are killing people, where they are killing people of color in their custody, where they're killing undocumented people that even haven't been charged with a crime. This is happening in your town. It's not happening way over there in Whoville, okay? It's happening everywhere. You're just as responsible as everywhere else that held slaves and that you didn't say anything about it. Mm-hmm. When you tell someone the truth, like the prophets in the Bible, you also curse them. Because now they know the truth. They've been confronted with the truth of the Creator. And if they ignore it, they're ignoring the Creator. So they unleash the punishments of that truth. And the punishments are as follows. You continue to kill, rape, and abuse our children, and your children are going to continue to die at the hands of your own white supremacists, mentally destabilized, crazy Columbine-style mass murderers. One a week. You have one a week in America, and you will continue because you refuse to let the slaves of America go. Because you refuse to let my people go. You will continue to have this epidemic of heroin as you continue to mass incarcerate and enslave people for small amounts of consuming a plant, and you keep them there as white people in supremacy are making millions off of the same plant and have decriminalized it for them. You will continue to lose your children at the hands of heroin and other drugs. You will continue to lose massive amounts of people because of your arrogance, because of your supremacy, because of your chokehold on these slaves. And many other plagues will befall you, America, unless you let the slaves go. I suggest you do what the Pharaoh did. The final thing on this report says that due to a shortage, well, this is the final thing I'm going to say to you. Go read it. Educate yourselves. Stop investing in slavery. You've heard the truth now. Don't turn back, y'all. Don't turn your back. Don't go back. Due to a shortage of publicly available data, because they don't keep data on any of this, because they're committing crimes against humanity. Because there's a shortage of publicly available data and the closed nature of detention centers, which they never let anyone go inside and see what they're doing, the extent to which ICE detainees are subject to sexual abuse nationwide is unclear. But the known incidences and allegations are too serious and too numerous to ignore. Yet that's exactly what America has done ever since they've been taking the data. And they have been exponentially growing the abuse, the torture, the rape, and the killings. So that shows you what they're really about. They point these allegations, they claim, these assaults point to an urgent need for investigation and for swift action to correct glaring gaps in detention policy, practice, and oversight. And you can all go and check out for yourself the reports the Department of Justice has on the abuses by Border Patrol, by immigration agents, by detention center officials, correctional officers, and agents. The abuses committed in jails against people, the abuses that are committed on the daily in your communities against people of color, the silence that is made to create horrendous situations for women who are being abused and who fear for their lives if they tell anybody about what crimes are being committed against them, whether it be domestic abuse or other crimes. Women have horrific tales of abuse that they have endured because they don't want to be deported, because their husband usually, sometimes, not always, but sometimes is the United States citizen. And because they have the ability to hold this power over a vulnerable person, they take advantage of it. With great power comes great responsibility, and most people do not know how to shoulder that responsibility, truth be told. Most people will take advantage of the weaker if they can. If they know that they can get away with something, they will try to get away with something, and they do. Unchecked power creates this vacuum, and it has created this S-hole that is America today. Thanks for hanging in there with me and listening and learning about what the real issue here is so that you can go out into your communities and make a difference. You've been listening to 88.1 FM, KPPPLP, Fargo Moorhead, where we are adding local color to your airwaves on a Mexican Crossing Lines. I'm out.